And we are on to the final stretch, the neutral cards, starting with Animated Broomstick. 1 cost, 1/1 rush. Battlecry, give your other minions rush. I think this is like potentially an okay card in like a Zoo-ish deck, but Zoo already has Magic Carpet. I feel like this is more likely a card that sees play like after Magic Carpet goes away. In general, I think this is like, it's okay, right? But like spending an entire card outside of a deck that has like tons of card draw, like Zoo, I think is pretty difficult to like really justify getting this effect. Though at the same time, you know, getting rush on all your minions can be really powerful, especially if you have stuff like lifesteal minions or anything like that. Maybe you want to have more copies essentially of Magic Carpet. So maybe you play like one of these in Zoo. Maybe play, you know, the full 2, but overall, it just seems like kind of low impact. And again, I think that like there are a lot of classes that like might be interested in this effect. You know, say you're playing like Priest, right? Like you know have big minions, then you can like, you know, Animated Broomstick to rush them in. That can be powerful, but at the same time, like without a lot of effective card draw, putting a really low impact card like this in your deck, I think can be problematic. So I don't think we'll see a ton of this outside of classes with really good card draw. Next up is Crimson Hothead. It's a 4-cost 3/6 dragon with spell burst, gain +1 attack and taunt. It's a dragon, crucially, and yeah, I think this is actually a pretty solid card. You know, a 3/6 for 4 is a decent stat line, and then the spell burst, making it a 4/6 taunt, is very, very good. You know, this is a card that I was thinking about when I was thinking about like the tempo draconic studies. You can draconic studies, you know, and play this for like 3 mana off of that, which, you know, can just be very difficult for everyone to deal with. You just play this on like turn 3, then in turn 4, you play a spell, and boom, you have this 4/6 taunt dragon. You know, very difficult for a lot of people to kill that in time and to deal with it once it's in play. So yeah, I mean, I think this is just like if you're playing a dragon deck, this is a good mid-range-ish dragon. As long as you're not playing like, you know, Dragon Hunter and you really want something like, you know, Evasive Worm or Evasive I forget even which one's which. This is, you know, a great way to play a more sort of defensive version of a mid-range dragon deck. Next up, we have Cult Neophyte. 2 cost 3/2. Battlecry, your opponent's spells cost 1 more next turn. This is, you know, definitely a card that has applications against combo decks. You can, you know, use this as a way to stall out an opponent who's looking to like Malagos combo you, looking to use like a mass removal effect. You know, being able to play this into your opponent's like, you know, Plague of Death turn, say, if you're playing like a mid-range or aggressive deck, and stall them off from being able to use the removal that, you know, would clear you. You can just, I mean, even just like against like Rogue period, this is a reasonably powerful card, right? Because like whether they're coining, whether they're like Praise Galacronding, backstabbing, whatever, Rogue decks are a little bit more minion focused nowadays because of Galacron lackey stuff. So maybe this doesn't necessarily have that much effect right now, but in the long term, I think this is, you know, a card that can really be powerful at shutting down combo/control strategies, just anything spell heavy, without being like a permanent effect, right? Or like a huge effect like a Loatheb. Next up, we have Desk Imp, just in case you want more wisps. Yeah, I mean, this, you know, maybe sees play in Scrap Imp Warlock. You just have, you know, even more things that you can buff with your Scrap Imps, get them to play, get them, you know, buffed up. If you really, really desperately want to Sacrificial Pact for totally free, you now have the opportunity. Next up is Divine Rager. You just had to, right? And we had Steel Rager, who was the 4-cost Rush Rager. Now there's Divine Rager, the Divine Shield 5/1. We're really finding all the possible combinations. I missed Ice Rager though. The everyone complained was power creep because it was better than Magma Rager. But Divine Rager, this is actually, you know, like the Divine Shield actually makes the 5 power like actually legitimately scary. Your 1 health isn't nearly as big of a difference. When, you know, they can't just ping it off or whatever, but still not going to be good. Educated Alec. This card is super cool. A 3-cost 3/4. Whenever a spell is played, this minion remembers it, because elephants never forget. I get it. Much like the Augmented Alec, this is, you know, a beast that can get extra cards in your deck. And it says deathrattle, shuffle spells into your deck. I think this is like a really cool card, right? Like this gives you a way to get extra copies of particular effects. It gives you a way to mitigate fatigue if you're playing a controlling strategy that doesn't necessarily want to play Elysiana, or maybe you want to play Elysiana and a little bit more in a world of additional Elysianas. It's also kind of funny, like if you play against like, say you play against like a Spell Druid, and they get this off Mount Seller, and then suddenly, like, now they might end up with just a bunch of Moonfires in their deck when they really don't want them. They want to be able to draw their high impact things, and then they're like, okay, their first spell gives them an Educated Alec, and then they're like, Moonfire, Innervate, oh god, like that. It's an interesting thing you could possibly use in like Plot Twist Warlock, right? One of the things about Plot Twist Warlock is that you just run out of stuff because you draw like your whole deck. Especially if you have spells that generate resources. Like if you have like, Forbidden Knowledge, the Warlock spell that like discovers Warlock cards. If you have Educated Alec, remember Forbidden Knowledge, you can actually like get additional stuff to shuffle into your deck later when you Forbidden Knowledge and have more plot twists. And you can plot twist and go infinite by having your Alex remember plot twists. I think it's cool. I just think it's like a super cool card that has tons of possibilities. It's one of my favorite cards in the set just from a conceptual standpoint, and I'm really curious to see how it plays out. Next up is Enchanted Cauldron, a 3-cost 1/6 with Spell Burst. Cast a random spell of the same cost. Seems like a tough card to justify. There's just so many spells, right? Like, say you play this into like Blessing of Kings, and it's like, all right, well, all equality. It's like, stupid Cauldron, why would you do that? I think it's just not a good card, but it's cool. It's like a funny card that'll do weird things, but it only does a weird thing once. So not enough wackiness for me. Next up is Fishy Flyer. Ooh, a 4-cost 4/3 Murloc with Rush. Deathrattle, add a 4/3 Ghost with Rush to your hand. This is interesting in the sense that it's just like a big Murloc, right? This, makes like Plague of Murlocs scarier. Plague of Murlocs, and it's like going to be more likely to give your opponent big things. It's very good with Scargale, right? You can Scargale and like Fishy Flyer, kill your guys. It's kind of neat. I think the Ghost is I would guess the Ghost is a Ghost rather than a Ghost Murloc, so you can't necessarily just like Ghost Murloc. The Ghost is indeed his Ghost. It's also a Murloc. So yeah, it is a Ghost. So if you actually have Scargale, your Fishy Flyers are effectively 1 for a 4/3, 1 for a 4/3. Huh. It's also like this is, just, it's not efficient, right? Like spending 4 to deal 4 to something and then 4 to deal 4 to something again. But if you do have ways to discount it, like Scargale, it could be really interesting. So seems kind of sweet, actually. Not really, card's going to see that much play, but could see play in Murloc deck. Next up is Headmaster Kelthuzad. 5-cost 4/6 spell burst. If the spell destroys any minions, summon them. This is pretty clearly just like a really strong card. Obviously, at its best in classes with solid removal options, like seems like it's probably best as a priest card. You play Headmaster Kelthuzad and then like Time Rip something, Shadowed Death something, Shadowed Ruin, a board full of big things. Yeah, it's just like a really, really powerful card. You can play this in Mage and like Conjurer's Calling your stuff and then get the stuff back. It's just a really, really strong card. I think this is pretty clearly an awesome card. There's even like, you can play this in like Warrior and Rogue now with like Coerce too. You could just Kel'Thuzad into Coerce, and you've not only coerced them into being dead, but onto your team. It doesn't work with anything that doesn't like, immediately kill the thing, right? Like you can't like use this with anything that like makes minions that then attack and kill their thing. If you use this with Brawl and win the Brawl with Kel'Thuzad, that's real good. But yeah, I think it's pretty clearly just like a super, super strong card that, can definitely massively swing games. Your opponent, like, you say you're playing against like, Highlander Hunter. They're like, I'm going to King Crush you off my brand. And then you're like, okay, I'll like kill your brand, play Headmaster Kelthuzad, kill your King Crush and smash you. Pretty sweet. Next up is Intrepid Initiate. A 1-cost minion, 1/2, spell burst, gain +2 attack. So when I first saw this card, it kind of gave me small-time Buccaneer vibes, right? It's obviously not as consistent and as like outrageously powerful because of patches as small-time Buccaneer, but this is like a 1-cost 3/2 in a deck that casts a spell on turn 2. That is really powerful. Like you can play this, like imagine this in like Token Druid, right? You play this turn 1, turn 2, you play like the Gibberling and Adorable Infestation. You attack your opponent for 4 and get another Gibberling. You play this in like Tempo Rogue. You like play this and backstab their guy. You play this, you coin. You play this into like Hand of It All. You play this into Libram. This just seems like a really, really solid minion. Obviously, you can't just play it in like a deck full of a bunch of aggressive minions because you need to have the spell burst to enable it. But it has 2 health. That's not that easy to kill on turn 1. It just seems like a strong card. This just seems like it's going to be like quietly a really, really, really good card. I feel like Small Time Buccaneer was really overlooked when it was first released. I remember having it on my like top cards of the set from my review, and very few other people had like mentioned it. Then it got nerfed. This feels, it gives me that vibe. I don't think it's as good, but I think it's very good. Next up is Keymaster Alabaster. 7 cost, 6/8. Whenever your opponent draws a card, add a copy to your hand that costs 1. This would be a lot stronger, obviously, in a world where we had like stuff like Cold Light Oracle or Research Project to immediately enable it. But it's also like worst case scenario. You play this and immediately get whatever card your opponent draws. And if they don't kill it, you can obviously get more. I don't think that there are any like both players draw cards effects in standard right now, other than Glide, right? It's not a really realistic card to play with Glide. It's like, yeah, I'm playing Demon Hunter without casting a Glide after playing a Keymaster Alabaster. Probably not going to happen. Definitely an interesting card. The fact that you get something that costs 1 is obviously like, pretty huge. So, you're naturally getting like a, like tempo advantage off of whatever it is that you copy with it, unless it's something like super cheap. Interesting card. Probably not going to see a lot of play though. I do feel like it's, doesn't immediately impact the board, just kind of steals, like cards from your opponent. And they, obviously they still get the card and they know what the card is that you got because they drew it, so they can play around it. Could be interesting in like, like control matchups for sure, but not really doing anything immediately on the board for 7 mana is a pretty hard sell. Next up is Lake Thresher. I talked about this quite a bit when I was talking about the Guardian Beasts or whatever it was. Guardian Animals. 4/6 for 5. Also damages the minions next to whomever this attacks. A big Cave Hydra. I tried really hard to make Cave Hydra work when that card was in Standard. And I tried really hard to make Cave Hydra work now that it's in Battlegrounds. And it's probably the card that I am like the most baited by in all of Battlegrounds. I get my Cave Hydra, and I'm like, yeah! And then, like, I never get a buff for it, and I'm like, no! Lake Thresher comes pre-buffed, though. Lake Thresher can attack and, eat stuff. Probably a little bit too slow is the thing, right? Like, at 5 cost, it's a 4/6. It's not that easy for opponent to kill. It can clear boards pretty readily. Your opponent obviously just knows that it's in play by the time they position, so they can like at least try to position around it more effectively than something like a weapon that immediately cleaves. Obviously, you can possibly use this with like a Rush Lackey, but probably gonna only really see play, my guess, with the Guardian Animals thing, which naturally gives it Rush and naturally makes that really, really powerful. It could be interesting actually with the weapon. Maybe you play this in Hunt. Maybe you play this in like Beast Hunter and play the weapon that makes your guys attack whatever you attack, so you effectively give it Rush. That actually seems pretty powerful. You can play this with the Crescent Arc Bow or whatever it is, right? And then yeah, you attack something small, the Thresher attacks it, and you cleave their stuff because you effectively give it Rush. That actually seems like it could be pretty good. So maybe it's got a home there. Maybe it's got a home in like Beast Hunter with the bow. Next up we have Lore Keeper Poggers. Polecat. We're just gonna say Poggers. This card is bizarre, right? This is one of the weirdest cards in the whole set. 4 cost, 4/5. Battlecry, reorder your deck from the highest cost to the lowest cost card. So there's so many possibilities with this, right? Like you could play this and just like, play this and like Holy Wrath someone, right? It's like, okay, the top card is like a, 20 cost thing or whatever the most expensive cost thing is, as long as I haven't drawn it yet. And it's Holy Wrath, and I'm guaranteed that it's the top card of my deck. It can be like, okay, I'm playing a really low curve deck with like a few high cost things, and I want to be able to, I play this, so it's like, okay, well, I just play out all my cheap stuff, and then I play this, and I'm guaranteed to start drawing into my big things, right? Like it's just, maybe you're playing like some sort of like combo deck, and you're like, okay, I can play this and be guaranteed to find my combo pieces. Maybe my combo pieces are all like big stuff. It's just, there's so many things you can do with this. Yeah, like say you're playing, Rogue Galakron or Wondrous Wind off Togwaggle, or, put your Hand of Gul'dan on top of your deck when you're playing Aggro Lock, so you definitely draw it and you can definitely dig through. There's just so many things you can do with this. Right? Like maybe the only 6 cost card in your deck is Skull of Gul'dan, and you're like, okay, well, I play this, and then next turn I draw my Skull of Gul'dan, which draws me another Skull of Gul'dan, and like, then all 3 cost things, whatever. It's just like a really, really interesting card. Don't know what we do with it. Don't know. There's just so many different things, but this is definitely a card that I think is going to get a lot of exploration, and a lot of people are going to try and abuse it. Next up is Mana Feeder Panthara, a 2 cost 2/3 beast. Battlecry, if you used your hero power this turn, draw a card. So this is interesting. Obviously, very good in Demon Hunter. If you're going to be hero powering for 1, definitely gives you a lot more efficient way to use this in any other class. Interesting in Hunter. It's a beast. You want to hero power and get them for 2. So might as well. But yeah, I think it's just like a really interesting card, right? You can play this in any deck, of course, and it's effectively, you know, a 2/3. You get whatever effect from your with like, think of it as a 2/3 for 4 with whatever your or 3 in the case of Demon Hunter, with Battle Cry, whatever your hero power does, draw a card, and that's like, you know, a pretty easy way to evaluate this. But you can also play it as just a 2/3 for 2 if you really want to play just a you know, a body to play out on the board early. So I think this is a pretty good card, honestly. And I think that, so there's like the weird thing about Demon Hunter is that Demon Hunter already has such good card draw that I don't know if you necessarily want to play this. There's, you know, you just also want to tear through your deck in a lot of them anyway. So maybe you know, ends up there anyway. But I think probably the most likely home for this is some sort of like mid-range aggressive hunter, because you're happy to play a 2/3 beast a lot of the time, and then you're also happy to just like cycle through your deck when you shoot your opponent in the face. And hunters don't have that much card draw, so all those things coming together makes me think that that's the most likely home for this. Next up is Ogremancer. 5 cost 3/7. When your opponent casts a spell, summon a 2/2 skeleton with taunt. I mean, 7 health is a lot for a 5-drop, and a lot of decks won't necessarily be able to easily kill a 7 health minion without casting a spell. Much like other ogres, it has good stats for cost. And yeah, I mean, this is kind of like the new version of, like, I want to say Togwaggle. It's not Togwaggle. God, what was the Goblin vs. Gnomes card that everyone thought was going to be like great? Trogzor. That's what it is. Trogzor. It's kind of like a Trogzor, but it's a Trogzor that actually defends you, right? One of the things about Trogzor is, like, if your opponent looks like it's playing a bunch of spells, it's like, okay, they play a bunch of spells and then just still kill you. You just have a bunch of gnolls in play, a bunch of trogs in play, or whatever. With this, you get a bunch of things with taunt, which is a very big difference. So I think this is a, you know, possibly interesting card. Doubt it'll see like a lot of play, but like it's something that like kind of is a possible corner case. Most likely not going to really show up. Next up is Onyx Mage Scribe. 6 cost 4/9 dragon. Spell burst. Add 2 random spells from your class to your hand. It seems tough to justify. Maybe this ends up being played in like a dragon priest, dragon mage, you know, something. You have to care about I think you have to care about the fact that this is a dragon, right? In order to really want to put this in your deck, because it doesn't do anything immediately. You know, a 4/9 is pretty big, but you're paying 6 and you're getting 2 random spells. Maybe this just gets played in like Demon Hunter because all their spells are nutty, right? Like, you're just like, okay, I'm playing this, I'm going to cast a spell. Maybe it's like a Highlander card. It is tough to kill it, right? Because it does have 9 health, so you're most likely going to get the spell burst, but it also, like, it doesn't do anything immediately. You know, like paying 6 for something that doesn't defend you in any way right away is pretty tough to justify. Yeah, maybe this ends up in like Highlander or Dragon Priest, but still, like, I don't know. Seems like there's already a lot of competition for this sort of thing, and you're gonna die against a lot of decks if you spend 6 mana playing this on turn 6. Next up is Pen Flinger. This card is hilarious. I want to play Pen Flinger Headcrack. You just go like Pen Flinger you, Headcrack you, Pen Flinger you. All you do is just recursively kill someone. Boop 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 boop. That's just amusing to me, right? Like, you're just like, aha, I'm just gonna kill you for 3 damage at a time for 4 mana at a time. It's not good, but it's funny. Next up, we have Plagued ProtoDrake, an 8 cost 8/8 dragon with deathrattle, summon a random 7 cost minion. I think this is, you know, a card that may see play like in like dual paladin, right? Like if you're playing like dual / commencement paladin, this is like one of the high end things that you're potentially happy to duel into play against just about anything. One of the weird things is that there's a lot of bad 7s. You know, there's a lot of at least there used to be. I guess Giggling Inventor's gone, so that's gone as like one of the weak 7s. But 7s aren't like great. Maybe this goes in like the deathrattle rogue shell that exists already with like Anka the Buried. Those are kind of the places that it feels like this may go. It's clearly a pretty powerful deathrattle. Obviously, it's a very powerful deathrattle. And you know, either the mixologist dude who got nerfed or Anka can both help enable this and power out that deathrattle pretty effectively. Next up is Robes of Protection. 3 cost 2/4 with your minions can't be targeted by spells or hero powers. This is a pretty powerful card, like against certain decks, right? Like this card is, if someone played this against my like Cyclone Mage spell deck, I'd be like, oh, I am dead. Like this is real powerful, you know, against anyone who's trying to actually use anything but AoE spells to clear your board. But yeah, I don't think this is a card that just like generally sees play, but I think this is a card which, you know, if there are a lot of like spell-based decks, will, you know, end up in decks to try and counter them. Like I can easily see this ending up in like zoo decks as like a one of, even against like just like spell druid, right? Like a lot of what their deck's trying to do is like use like their bog beams on your guys and their whatnot, and like if you just like robes of protection, it's like, oh, well, I have to kill all my own stuff. So I think it's just like a solid tech card in the right metagame. Next up is Smug Senior, a 6-cost 5/7 taunt with deathrattle and a 5/7 ghost with taunt to your hand. So these are the ghosts that are haunting the school, much like Hogwarts, I guess. The senior is like, I'm so cool, no one can stop me. And that's like, you're dead, you're a ghost. Shucks, they could stop me. But yeah, I think like just kind of too weak overall. 6-cost 5/7, yes, it's like a good value tool over multiple turns. It would obviously be outrageous if we're like into play, but it's obviously not into play, it's into your hand. So I'm going to spend 6 mana again to play another 5/7 is like, if you're playing like a very removal heavy metagame, but you also want to taunt, so you don't just want like Karen or whatever, maybe it's good, but it seems like it's probably not going to get the job done. Next up is Sneaky Delinquent. 2-cost 3/1 stealth, deathrattle at a 3/1 ghost with stealth to your hand. So this one I think is actually good. Like a 3/1 stealth for 2 is not bad. Obviously it's not like great, right? But it's going to get like decent damage in. It's almost guaranteed to connect for 3. It's a stealth card, so it can easily just go into stealth rogue and be like an extra way that you kind of just get a little bit of additional like presence, pressure, value. It just seems like a good aggro rogue card. It's effectively like a card draw effect that draws you a 3/1 stealth, and in a stealth deck, that's really good. So yeah, I just think this is a very solid card for like stealth rogue and possibly for other like aggressive decks that just are looking for consistent sources of damage. This can just connect for 3, your opponent kills it, you're like, all right, play a new one, connect for 3, and that's really good from a 2-drop, right? Like that's actually, I think, a totally solid card. Yes, you can play the Spy Mistress, that's a 3/1 stealth, but you can then play that into this, right? You can only play 2 Spy Mistresses, you can play 2 of that, then 2 of this, and that just gives you a lot of consistent access to stealth effects for your stealth deck. And a lot of just like overall pressure, right? Next up is Sorceress Substitute, 6-cost 6/6, battlecry. If you have spell damage, you get another one. Summon a copy. Yeah, I mean, it feels like it's a little bit clunky in most matchups, right? Like I've said many times, you pay 6 for something that doesn't immediately like impact the board, doesn't either have a battlecry or that kills something or taunt. In a lot of matchups, that's just too slow. It's just too bad. That said, 2 6/6s for 6 is a lot of pressure. I had a lot of people ask me, why my like elemental mage deck doesn't play Animated Avalanche, and Animated Avalanche is 2 7/6s for 7, and it's a lot of the reason that I think that this card might not really see play either is because it's just pretty slow. See, Shiro doesn't like it. He's borking about it. He's like, that's too slow. You're gonna have to do better. But against controlling decks, this can be really powerful, right? If you're playing this against like Warrior, you're playing this against like Priest, right? Like one card that represents possibly 12 damage, 2 6/6s, can be really hard to deal with. But against aggressive decks, it's just disastrously slow. Next up is Sphere of Sapience. First of all, I want to say it's cool that this is the first neutral weapon. We've had only class-specific weapons for all of Hearthstone's history up to this point, and seeing a neutral weapon, I think is cool. It's design space that hasn't really been tapped yet. And, being able to think of the various places that you can put this in the different decks, I think is definitely a more interesting thought experiment than if this were just a mage card or a priest card or warlock card or whatever. But yeah, I think this is an interesting card. It can definitely go into like control decks. It can go into combo decks to help you like smooth out your draws and find what you're looking for throughout the game. Yeah, very similar to like Scry from Magic the Gathering, right? You effectively get 4 total uses of it, and it's 4 total uses assuming you put it on the bottom. As long as you want to keep it, you actually get to keep the sphere around. So it can help you smooth out your curve. It can help you like get rid of situational cards that aren't good in a matchup. It can help you like dig for combo pieces. It's just generally like an interesting card. And it's important to recognize that anything that's like going to search your deck shuffles your deck. So putting something on the bottom is only on the bottom until you use an effect like that. So it's important to keep in mind that like send a legendary to the bottom and then draw it after you use something that searched your deck. It's not broken. The card's not bugged. You just need to recognize how the card actually works. Next up, we have Steward of Scrolls, a 5-cost 4/4 with spell damage +1. Battlecry, discover a spell. This card, when I first looked at it, I was like, I don't know. It's kind of clunky. Like spell damage on a 5-cost minion is much harder to use than like cheaper minions. Then I sort of realized of like, this is kind of like Azure Drake, right? And Azure Drake was pretty great. Discover spells, obviously different than draw a card. It's less good at like, digging you through your deck, finding particular combos, less consistent. But it's also like a different world, right? Like, things have gotten a lot faster and more powerful in a lot of cases than when Azure Drake was like this really, really powerful card in a lot of different decks. That said, this I think is definitely, has some potential, but like we'll see, I think, much less play than Azure Drake did, right? Like Azure Drake was often just saw play just to like cycle, right? Now you have like Big Ol' Whelp. If you don't care about spell damage, Big Ol' Whelp's obviously way better. So this is only really going to see play. Well, I guess not obviously way better because this is discover spell, not draw a card. The spell damage in this, is I think going to be the main reason people like lean toward this if they want like a certain density of spell damage effects. And this giving you a spell, obviously, A, gives you a way to use the spell damage, and B, like helps just keep you up in terms of resources compared to other stuff. So I don't really think this will see like a ton of play. I think that if it does see play, it will be specifically in decks that really care about spell damage, like Raz Frostwhisper type decks, or that sort of thing, because there's just a lot of competition at these slots for both stats and efficiency, and this is not as impressive as a lot of other things out there. Next up, we have Tour Guide. 1 cost 1/1. Battlecry, your next hero power costs 0. We saw this in the reveal stream being used in Zoo to basically just let you like life tap for free, which is obviously a pretty powerful use of it. I think that this one thing you really need to keep in mind about this is it's your next hero power, not your next hero power this turn. So you can potentially use this to set up a hero power on a future turn for 0. If you want to synergize like whether with life tap or life tap, I think it's most likely to be used just in Warlock. Like I think that reducing your hero power to 0 for most other classes is just not that good. Maybe use it in like combo and with like, Exodia type paladin or whatever in Wild or something like that. But overall, I feel like it's unlikely to really get the job done. It's not like it's giving you an extra hero power. It's not like you're able to like use this to like totem twice in Totem Shaman or anything like that. You can use it as a 1-drop, battle cry enabler for Quest Shaman, but like you're playing your quest in turn 1 and you don't really care about your hero powers. It's just not really that big a deal. I guess you could use it in like Quest Shaman to like let you use your actual quest hero power later for 0 to like tempo out stuff like Alexstrasza or whatever. Like maybe that's a good place for it, but overall, it feels like it's fairly narrow, and I don't expect to see that much play. Next up, we have Transfer Student. We obviously have seen Transfer Student in action since it was the card that was given to everyone for free and included in the metagame early. And this card's just cool. It's good. I think that we're going to see a lot of Transfer Student in a lot of different decks. Any deck that like kind of wants some 2-cost tempo play, very likely going to be kind of interested in Transfer Student. Can be good. Obviously, wide variety of effects, but I don't think this is the sort of thing that you obviously just like play everywhere. But like in decks that want to be doing something on turn 2, don't have that many different options, or just want some sort of like they're aggressive decks that want pressure, Highlander type decks, I think are the most likely places we'll see it. It's just good. I've already been playing it quite a bit, and I really like the design. I like the concept of it, and expect to see a decent amount of it as we continue moving forward. Next up is Vectus. A 5-cost 4/4 with Battlecry, summon 2 1/1 whelps. Each game's a deathrattle from your minions that died this game. This card's really interesting. Very powerful possible tool in like Deathrattle Hunter, Deathrattle Rogue. Obviously, you want things that have specific Deathrattle power, that their power is in the Deathrattle and is powerful with a 1/1, right? Like this isn't good if you have like the porcupine, beast or whatever, right? That dies and deals its power to your opponent's stuff. It is very good if you have like Scrapyard Colossus, or you have the new ProtoDrake with Deathrattle, Plague ProtoDrake. Any of those things, this can be obviously super powerful with, but not going to be powerful with things that are contingent on the state of the minion, like Chromatic Egg. If you Chromatic Egg, you just don't get anything because you didn't discover a dragon to put inside this well. But yeah, this is definitely an interesting card that can sort of snowball the power of already powerful Deathrattle effects. We'll see if it's too much of like kind of a win more-ish thing. Like if you're playing a lot of these Deathrattle decks, if your Deathrattle goes off, you're pretty happy, right? But probably more likely to be more effective in like a mid-range type Deathrattle with like stuff like the Hunter deck, with the new like bloated Serpent, or the Teacher's Pet, things like that. Next up is Voracious Reader. A 2-cost 1/3 at the end of your turn, draw until you have 3 cards. I think this card is like just quietly like one of the best cards in the set. We obviously live in a different world than we did during GVG, but Jeeves was a really, really powerful card back then in a lot of aggressive decks. A lot of aggressive decks now have better card draw options than they had back then, but this is also half the cost of Jeeves and only affects you. So yeah, I mean, if you're playing like any kind of aggressive deck that doesn't necessarily have access to good card draw options, like say you're playing like Aggro Paladin, right? Like it used to be Aggro Paladin would Divine Favor. Now you can play Aggro Paladin and you just play Voracious Reader, right? You dump your hand, play your Voracious Reader, draw more cards, and your opponent doesn't kill it, well, do the same thing next turn. And if they do kill it, okay, well, maybe you draw your second Voracious Reader, because unlike Jeeves, this is not a legendary, so you can actually just get the next one. So I think this card is really good. And one of the things I really like about it is exactly what I just described, the fact that it enables aggressive strategies in classes that don't necessarily have other tools to enable aggressive strategies because they run out of gas, right? You know, we've seen Aggro Paladin has seriously struggled since Divine Favor got rotated to the Hall of Fame. You know, we see like Aggro Priest, right? Aggro Priest has always just kind of been a meme. There were always these like, Shadow Bomber style Priest cards, but you just would run out of cards and you couldn't really play Aggro Priest. Voracious Reader, maybe you can play an Aggro Priest deck, who knows? So I think this is a very, very powerful card that I expect to not only see play, but totally spawn new deck types, because it really is that powerful in terms of enabling totally different strategies we haven't been able to really find success before. Next up is Wandmaker. 2-cost, 2/2 with Battlecry. Add a 1-cost spell from your class to your hand. Obviously, a decent like combination of like just early game dude plus utility effect, probably at its best in Demon Hunter, because Demon Hunter has so many good 1-cost spells. I remember like Cobalt Spellkin was played in Demon Hunter before because you could only get like Mana Burn, right? You get like Mana Burn, Consume Magic, or Twin Slice, right? You can play this, like there's now like Demon Companion and Double Jump that you can get added to that pool, and yeah, now you can play Wandmaker in that and just, get something from the pool of a bunch of awesome stuff. I guess you can get Philosophy too. That might be a fail case in some decks, but yeah, you could just play it in a lot of different decks that have like, good 1-cost spells. Like you could play it in Mage. You're very likely to get something like a Ray of Frost or a Magic Trick, an Evocation, right? There's just so many things. Play it in Hunter, get like a Tracking or a Rapid Shot. There's just a lot of classes that have decent 1-cost things that you wouldn't necessarily even put in your deck, but are totally fine to get for free off of a card that you can just not get like a ton of tempo out of, but like, play something on turn 2 and then get your beatdown on, get your bonus spell. So obviously if you're playing a deck with like spell burst minions, right, this is a great way to help enable them to get extra cheap spells in your hand. Could be an extra way to help utilize that in classes that don't necessarily have that many cheap spells. And we've reached it. The final card, alphabetically in neutrals in Scholomance Academy. It is Wretched Tudor. 4-cost, 2/5 with spell burst, deal 2 damage to all their minions. I think it's actually just a fine AoE card for classes that don't necessarily have good AoE, right? Like if you're playing like a Hunter, right? You're playing Hunter and you're like, you know what? I need to protect myself from swarm decks. Boom. I can play Wretched Tudor and rapid fire guy and blow him up. That's about it. I think it's pretty obvious that like that's what it's good at, right? Like you're looking to AoE against aggressive decks. You don't have good AoE in your class. That's what you play it for. It is a little bit odd to me that it is a Wretched Tudor and it just is an AoE effect. That seems strange just from a flavor perspective, but it is a school, so kind of everything's about teaching you something. This is about teaching you to hurt people. Anyway, that is it. That is the end of my Scholomance Academy review. I hope you all enjoyed. Let me know what you think. What do you think the best cards are in the set? Do you think I'm completely off of my evaluation of anything? Do let me know. Thank you very much for watching. And we're looking forward to this set. There's all kinds of cool stuff. I'm super excited to build all these decks, stuff like Buff Priest, Dual Paladin, Beast Hunter, all these things, Token Druid. I'm going to cast a lot of adorable infestations with Shiro on my lap, and it's going to be adorable. So anyway, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you at the Academy.